If a stranger in a coffee shop asked you, "When has God shown up in your life?" you might find the question a little odd. But if you paused, chances are you'd have a story to tell. At St. Mark's, we believe God is at work everywhere, and everyone has a God encounter story. Inspired by StoryCorps, this Lent we're introducing GodCorps, an opportunity to record a short interview and share an experience of God at work in your life. We'd love to hear your story.
My name is Phill, and I am joined by my wife, Sarah.
Hello.
And we just wanted to take a moment to talk about something. Sarah, I know that this is something that you and I think about from time to time. That's pretty near and dear to our hearts. But do you mind talking with me about a way that God showed up in an unexpected way after we had our miscarriages?
Absolutely. No, I think that at first I certainly felt a big wedge between myself and the Lord initially. But as time went on, and as our friends and family, and sometimes even perfect strangers, lifted us up in prayer, I think it actually ended up drawing us closer to God. And I say us because I know that you and I handled it a little differently from one another, but I think we both kind of came back to the same conclusion, and we both kind of came back to God in a lot of ways.
So when we were first pregnant, how were you feeling in that moment?
Oh, when I found out?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I was overjoyed. It was not expected at all, and I think you might recall that. We were over at a friend's house, and I had been complaining to one of our friends about how uncomfortable I was.
Yeah.
And with pregnancy, often there comes a lot of discomfort, and it's strange to think that there can be a lot of joy in that discomfort, but that is what I was feeling. And she had a pregnancy test with her, so she said, "Hang on a second, I'm going to run upstairs and I'm going to grab you a pregnancy test, because this sounds like pregnancy to me." And I was like, "I doubt that. I don't think that's what it is." So she had me take the test, and 2 little pink strips showed up, and lo and behold, I was in fact pregnant. And I just remember feeling very glowy for the few weeks that I knew that we were pregnant.
So then take me through that moment of when you found out that we went from being pregnant to no longer pregnant, and when we found out the reality of the miscarriage.
The first and second time were very different from one another. The first time, I started to feel kind of sick, and my stomach really hurt. In fact, I think, if I remember correctly, we ended up going to the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And I was shaking, and it was really weird. My body it didn't feel like I had control over my body, and to this day, I'm not really sure what that was. But we went to the hospital, and they put me on a drip and took all of my vitals. They gave me something for the shaking, and they actually ended up giving me an ultrasound because I was so nervous about the pregnancy. And I then was told everything was going to be okay. I could see the little tiny, I don't think that baby was even as big as an apple seed.
Mm-hmm.
It was tiny. But I saw a picture of that baby, and And I remember thinking, it is going to be okay. And it was either later that night or the night afterward, I started to bleed. And I started to panic a little bit. So I had a follow-up appointment with my primary caregiver after the hospital visit. And he then called me back the same day that I was bleeding and said, "I'm so sorry, Sarah, but I think you are miscarrying."
Yeah.
I was very upset about it.
I remember. So was I.
And I remember thinking that God had abandoned me. I remember wondering if I had somehow fallen out of favor with him, if I had done something or said something. And I know in my heart of hearts that is crazy talk. But at the time, it really felt like somehow I was being punished.
Well, I think that's a very common feeling and thought for many people. And I think a lot of people think that they need to apologize for the way that they're feeling about something.
Yeah.
But I think that feelings, I would say that you can react to how you think about your feelings or what you do with your feelings. But the way that you're feeling is the way that you're feeling.
It's a part of you. And I think that God gave us feelings on purpose. He knew that we would need them, and they're important parts of our identity and our whole being. My sister was actually instrumental in breaking that way of thinking, because I was completely ready to walk away from my faith. I was that upset with God. And Ashley then asked me over the phone, "Do you really think you're going to find the same hope that is found in Jesus Christ outside of the Christian faith?" And I paused, and then very begrudgingly, after having thought about it for a moment, said, "No." I remember being kind of annoyed about that. And it did. It took a while. It took a long time for me to feel like God was on my side and like Jesus was right there with us through that loss. The second miscarriage was different, though. Some of those same feelings still bubbled up, but the experience of the miscarriage itself was different than the first one.
Yeah.
We were told it was called a missed miscarriage, and that means that the body still thinks that it's pregnant and still acts like it's pregnant. So I was, I didn't feel quite as nauseated as I was expecting to feel, but I had also heard that sometimes people don't experience nausea during pregnancy. So I figured, okay, maybe I'm one of those lucky people who don't experience that.
Yeah.
But it was at our 12-week appointment for the ultrasound when there wasn't a heartbeat, there wasn't any sign of life, really. And unfortunately, we lost that little girl maybe 6 or 7 weeks in. But then my body still, nothing had come away. So again, my body still thought that it was pregnant. And I think I wasn't upset with God per se at that point, but I was definitely confused. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, we're never going to have children. If this keeps happening, I don't think I can go through this again. And there are women who have experienced miscarriages 8 to 10 times. And I don't know how they do it.
Yeah.
But I mourn with them, and so does Christ. The second time, I think I felt a little closer to Jesus. I think I felt his presence a little bit more clearly the second time around, because we had already been through one miscarriage, and I had already grown a little closer to him again after several months.
How do you think that this experience has grown you closer to Christ?
You know what, Phil? I think God has blessed me with a heart that loves and is full of compassion for people all over the world whom I've never met and I may never meet. But through this experience, especially because I've experienced the pain of losing those first 2 babies, I think that maybe God, throughout the rest of my life, will allow me to, first of all, feel a deeper love and concern and care for children, but also a deeper love and concern for moms and dads the world over.
Yeah.
And my prayers every night have been for moms and dads and for the health and safety of children.
Thank you for listening to this episode of St. Mark's Episcopal Church, GodCore. If you would like to record one of these episodes and tell your story about how you've experienced God, please use the link in the notes to schedule your time. We look forward to hearing your story, and we hope that you continue to tune in to hear ours. Thank you, and God bless you.